So Ashly Burch put up a video recently, which you should go watch, talking about how Guerrilla Games used the character she was the voice actor for, Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn, and used it as a tech demo for how they could insert AI into the game development process by using AI-generated voice and acting. And Ashly Burch, I think, very justifiably talked about her concerns about how this approach to AI threatens her entire industry, threatens how the art of voice acting might actually exist in gaming in years ahead. And I think this is really important because video games are an art form and voice acting is an art form. Anyone who loves video games or anime dubs or audiobooks knows how much of an art form voice acting is and how much good voice acting can transform media, can really elevate it beyond what the text actually contains. And yet again, we're reminded of what the actual threat to our arts is. Because it's not what many of the right think it is. They keep going on about how woke is threatening video games, even when the real threat is very obvious. The real threat to video games is the involvement of big money. Because over the last few years, we've seen massive layoffs across the video games industry. And most people who defend the involvement of big money in gaming say that all of these layoffs is because of the end of lockdown. Some video games companies were just unable to cope with the change of what audiences were actually interested in and how video games stopped being people's priorities. But if that was the case, then all the layoffs we'd see were for companies that became financially unviable due to the changing climate. What we've actually seen is layoffs across the industry, completely regardless of whether or not the studio is doing well, the video game is doing well, whether or not they're making money or losing money. Everyone gets laid off. There's no such thing as job security in video games anymore. If you work really hard and produce a beautiful game, if you produce a game that does incredibly well and makes loads of money, you're almost just as likely to get laid off as if you create a failure. And the reason behind this is fairly straightforward and fairly obvious. We've seen venture capital do this to all kinds of industry, not least journalism. They will buy up a journalistic outfit, take control of its IP, and then completely strip it of assets, just sell off everything, lay off as many people as possible, and reduce its output to the minimum viable product. It doesn't matter how much they degrade the product in doing so. They've made money by selling off all the assets, and they can then flip the remnants for pennies, having made cash from their investment. Venture capital is a short-termist, destructive force of investment. It only has an interest in how much cash it can make in the next weeks, maximum months. Whatever happens beyond that isn't their problem. They've moved on by that point. And that's exactly what venture capital is doing to the gaming industry. It gets hold of studios, lays off the staff, no matter how much talent is involved in that staff, sells off the assets, and then ditches the IP to someone else, making as much money as possible in the process. Who cares what happens to the art behind it? Who cares if it was even making money in the first place? Because that money is long-term. Studios don't make money in weeks and months if they don't have a game literally coming out that week. They make money over years, and venture capital doesn't care about years. So they run rampant around the gaming industry, destroying studios, driving artists out of the industry so they can make quick cash from it at the expense of video games. And that's also exactly what this AI is going to be used for. Bring it into game studios, lay off the voice actors, lay off the animation studio, implement bargain basement replacements, call it an improvement, call it technological advance. show off the tech in loads of demos so that gamers get excited by it, instead of realizing that what they're getting is a worse product, and then having cut all of what they see as financial liabilities instead of genuinely great art that we know it is. The game studio is then worth more, which means they are more attractive to someone who will come in, give the founders a bunch of money, and strip mine it for profit. That's the threat the gaming industry is facing and has been facing for years. It is what is leading to a general decline in quality across a lot of the games that get shoved in our faces. It's what's leading to so many great voice actors, animators, coders, game creators tapping out and going elsewhere, because they know staying in the industry means being chewed up and spit out. And that's why it's so important to support the efforts of SAG-AFTRA and other groups like that going on strike to try and secure rights and protections for voice actors in the industry. Because if they don't secure the legal rights, if they don't get it chalked down on paper in a way that they can legally enforce, that's what comes next. Ashly Burch is right to be worried, and anyone who is interested in the creative industries should be worried about the march of generative AI and what it will be used for in the short term, which isn't making things cheaper or making things easier. It's the destruction of the creative arts, because that makes more money for this quarter for venture capital firms. And to them, that is literally all that matters.